I don't know that they don't exist.
No, it says we exist outside of space and time. Computers would need to exist always within space and time. It's literally what makes them work.
Well, I took that to believe that they, because they are so advanced, can live anywhere in space and time.
Well, they can, but they still exist within space and time.
Yeah, but I believe they can manipulate. So I believe that...
I agree, but that doesn't take you out of space and time. That just moves you along space and time. The
know,
Q lived outside of space. But they said we live outside of space and time.
I don't remember that.
It's at the very end. I unfortunately saw this twice.
Well, I saw it 3 times, and I have 4 pages of notes. So.
I know. It's literally the only thing I wrote down.
Okay.
But, like, the Q lives outside of space and time. Or the wormhole aliens lived outside of space and time. Space and time doesn't affect them in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. If you can move through time, space and time still exists for you.
Agreed.
You're just not staying in one place on that scale.
Right. Yeah.
So my problem is, as long as they're sticking with we live outside of space and time, to make them robots would be a little stupid. So that's why I didn't think they were robots. They might end up being robots, and I'll think it's dumb, because robots need a time parameter to exist. They don't necessarily have... I could take my computer, turn it off, and turn it back on in 6 weeks. It'll still work. It doesn't know 6 weeks have passed, except for the time parameter on the computer. But in order for it to work, it needs a time parameter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I still think that they are in space and time, but can manipulate it so they say that they can be anywhere at any time.
Okay, so if that's the way they go with it, fine. They just use bad wording in this episode.
That could be. Yeah.
But I still don't really like it. But that's another here nor there, because it's necessary at this point. For where they back the story into, it's necessary for them to find something to help them. I don't necessarily know if it's necessary for this to be the answer, but they definitely need some kind of answer. And this one makes sense because it ties in the admonition that was only half seen by organics and gives you the full admonition and tells you why they were wrong, which I kind of thought was going to be the case anyway, right?
Yeah. Okay, so still talking about this admonition. This was one question that I have, and I'm sure that you are going to answer it for me because you answer all of my questions, Pat.
I'll try, but I don't know about this one.
Okay, so I had to write this down in my logical mind, like I'm using the law of transitivity. If A, then B. If B, then C, then A equals C. So there's 2 parts of the admonition that Sutra is getting, and I wrote it down as it was going because I wanted to follow the logic. So the admonition starts, and it says that organics had this search for perfection, and perfection then leads to the synthetic life. Synthetic life doesn't age, get sick, or die.
Correct.
And organics started fearing that, and so they kill that which they fear. Therefore, the organics destroy themselves. So we have there that the organics destroy themselves, which is part A of my question. Then it later in the admonition, the mind meld, says there is an alliance of synthetic life. We are waiting for this signal. We are there to protect you when you send us the signal. And it says your evolution will be their extinction. So in that part of it, it sounds like that the synths will cause their extinction. So part A, it says organics will destroy themselves. But part B, it says that the synth evolution will be their extinction. So I'm wondering who really is causing the extinction of the organics.
Both are true. Because it's said backwards, but it's said backwards intentionally. The evolution of the synths causes the organics to try and kill them, which in turn has the synths and their alliance destroy the organics. So
which never would have happened if the organics didn't create synths.
Correct.
So both are true.
Right, because we create something. We continue to try and make it perfect. We then start to fear that perfectness. Their evolution is what caused us to then try and kill them. They, in turn, defend themselves and kill us. So in both cases, we caused their evolution, but their evolution is what caused us to fear them. Both cases are correct.
Ah. Wow. That's some tricky logic going on there.
Well, it's just said backwards. If it was said the other way, it would make more sense. If it was said, or it would be easier to decipher, I guess, in my opinion. If it was said that our evolution, all it has to, if our evolution will cause them to fear us, their fear will cause us to kill them, so therefore, their creating us caused their demise.
Okay. Okay, so that makes sense. That it's
you still have the
ways.
if P then F, if F then T, if T then Q.
Stop.
It's
mocking
true.
Me.
Well, no, it is. If humans create synths,
Yeah.
right, they will evolve them. If they evolve them, they will fear them. If they fear them, they will try and annihilate them. If they try and annihilate them, they will be annihilated by synths.
Right.
The if and thens work all the way
Okay.
through. It's just out of order in the admonition.
Okay, yeah, it was the order that messed me up. Okay, cool. See, I knew you could answer my questions. This is why we podcast, listeners. So please let us know if you have any other questions that Pat can answer.
I see things in funny ways.
Yes. Okay, so since we're on this little Q&A, I have another question for you. And this, lots of questions, actually.
All right, well,
So-
hold on. Before we get into, you can
Okay.
question me as much as you want. I want to know a question from you real quick, and it's an easy, quick answer. Okay. What did you think about the fact that this was the first episode we didn't have a flashback to start the episode?
Oh, I missed it.
It's not a flashback. It's just them coming out of the wormhole.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't have something that led us and continued the story 14 years ago.
Right, or even 3 weeks or 6 months or whatever. But
Yeah, they mostly have been 14 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
Gosh, now that you mention it, I
didn't like
miss it, but it didn't stick out in my mind.
I'm
Didn't
glad
even
because it
notice
slapped me in the face, and I was like, "Wait a second. And then we had like this half second as we came back from the intro.
Mm-hmm.
It was Picard dreaming as he was almost dying, with him talking to his friend earlier in the season. Do you really want to go back into space now more than ever?
Yeah.
But that's not. I don't really consider that to be a fair
Yeah, no.
flashback. Like,
Yeah. I agree. That's not a
yeah, I didn't
true
think when they
flashback.
didn't do it anymore, it would bother me, but I didn't like that it wasn't there.
Awesome.
So
Because, yeah, I was always saying I loved how they did that. Well, we agreed that we liked how they did that with the storytelling.
right,
They
because
were
they give
getting
you like the last time
stories
on
at once.
Picard, right?
Yeah.
And then they give you an actual flashback.
Right.
So I don't really care what the last time on Picard because I watched the episodes like 5 times between weeks, but I understand why they do it. But then to have just a flashback that moves the story forward was great because you kind of can disconnect mentally from what's going on at the exact moment the episode comes back, and it kind of feeds you into what the episode's going to give. Whereas this time we're just like, oh, it's shaking. We're here. Oh, Girardi woke up. Oh, she doesn't know we're not going to Deep Space 12. Oh, well, Picard is talking. People are talking through him. This is weird.
Okay. Now I'm wondering which way to go. Because, okay, so since you mentioned that, where you have that quote unquote flashback of Picard talking to, do you really want to go out there, with basically your condition? So I think that's there in part to remind us viewers that there is this syndrome that he has, and it's never once said Irumodic syndrome, but we are all thinking that.
Right.
And Picard, when I saw it the first couple of times, it felt like he was being taken over, where he says, "Thank you for coming, everyone." And I was like, well, yeah, he's got Borg implants, maybe as some kind of Borg. Maybe I also was thinking, because in Nemesis, how the Remans were able to control Troy's mind. And so I was thinking there was some kind of Romulan, interference going on there. I did not once think that it was his hallucinations and this syndrome that he has.
Yeah, I still don't think it is.
You think there's some, because it looked like he was being controlled.
If he wasn't, possessed by someone else, then that was,
Right.
I'm sorry, Patrick, that was awful acting for once. It's just, it was so obvious, horror movie, I am, yes, and we will. It was just like Independence Day when the doctor gets taken over, who, by the way, is Data, just so everyone knows. And he's talking for the aliens. I mean, it was exactly the same kind of thing. Yeah. And I don't know, whatever. I do like the scene that led into that a little bit, or the parts that led into that, where they weren't going. I mean, Picard is wrong, and Soji is right. They should have killed him. But when he says there's a difference between killing an attacker and watching a wounded one die, I like that theory, but you should have killed him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like that we have that set up so early in the episode, because that is the theme that Soji and therefore us are dealing with through this entire episode. And she goes through quite the logical dilemma of like, well, yeah, do we kill one to save others? Like, she is literally going through that mind experiment and trying to justify. And, you know, she ends up with the conclusion, should have killed Narek. And now, does that continue to, yes, we need to kill all organics to preserve us?
I think that depends on where you're sitting. We would say no, but we're organic.
Right.
They might say yes. Here's my thing with that, and we're jumping way to the end of the episode. Mm-hmm. If you have to put... Look, this is clearly tyranny at its best, right? She's... what's her name? The one that takes over. Thank you. Sutra. She's clearly taken over. She's a tyrannical leader at this point. She's caused something to happen to radicalize everyone else, just like she is, by letting Narek out and to kill Sonya, right?
Saga.
Saga, right. Saga, who was Jana's sister, right? They were the sisters?
No. Sutra is Jana's sister. Saga is Arcana's sister.
Right, okay. It's so hard keeping them in track at this point.
Yeah.
But yes, so because her sister was murdered, she was radicalized. Then she saw the admonition, was radicalized even more. Right. Then she allows Narek out, who kills whatever, Saga, which radicalizes the rest of them, right?
Right.
More. But if your convictions are so fragile that one person can throw that off, then maybe your convictions aren't strong enough to begin with. And that's what she's afraid of with Picard being let out in public. So much like every other tyrannical regime we've ever seen in the United States, she silences her political opposition and tries to shove it in jail. And that was Soon's idea, who I don't even like the fact that he's in the episode.
Yeah. Hold off on that. So I do not believe that Narek killed Saga. I believe it was Sutra that killed Saga, that let Narek go, killed Saga, in order to use that event to radicalize the community.
Which would actually make my point even more, and I believe... I didn't even think of that. However, after hearing you say it, I think you're right. She killed her.
Yes.
They make you believe it was him because he points out that little bird.
Hummingbird. Yeah.
Yes. And that ends up in her eye, and then Soon is all upset, so he becomes even more radicalized at that moment. And then, because now she has an ally, she can radicalize the rest of them, and blah, blah, blah. But I think you're right. I think she committed the murder. Now there's nobody that would tell on her because Narek runs.
Yeah.
And blame it on your enemy, which, I mean, we've seen that in a million movies and TV shows forever. It would let a bad guy go, tell them the bad guy did it, but it was really one of us is a bad guy.
Right. Yeah, and I love exactly what you're saying. She is this tyrannical leader that is pushing down any opposition to her, specifically Picard, because, you know, Picard makes this plea, which in my opinion is the definition of insanity, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later because I can't stand that part. But she, you know, is now justified in saying we've got to attack because here's this example, and, you know, Picard is the wrong thing, and so she's imprisoning him. And it's like, how many in our Earth history leaders have done that? Put down the opposition and only give one side of the story. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can see this from every tyrannical leader in the history of the world. Mm-hmm. This exact way of going about business. Take anyone you want. Let's talk about the one